because many people get happiness very wrong. They feel that happiness is all about feeling good. Passion isn't this wonderful bliss, this thing where everything fits perfectly into place and everything's harmonious and everything's wonderful. We can still have grit even when we quit. We hear about so many people who stay in a relationship that they don't like or do a job that they don't enjoy and think how sad it is simply because they've already spent so many years doing the certain thing, and think how sad it is that they're not courageous enough to quit because they've already put so much effort, so much time, so much energy in those relationships or that job that they're not willing to quit, even though that may be better for them. However, on the other hand, we're always told that the last thing you should do is give up. So this raises a very important question. How do we know when to quit, and when should we actually really never give up? So firstly, I'm going to talk about the importance of not giving up, and then I'm going to say when you actually should maybe consider quitting. In Angela Duckworth's book Grit, she talks about how important it is for success to be consistent, and talks about how grit isn't falling in love, but rather staying in love, which means that grit isn't about intensity. It's about never giving up, and it's very important because we're only going to get results if we do something for a very long time. The first time you work out, you don't come home and suddenly see that you've got six-pack abs, or if you're a woman that you've lost weight. You have to do a lot of workouts to actually get to that stage that you even see anything at all. And grit isn't only important for success, it's also very important for happiness, and that is because of self-efficacy. Now, we all know that it feels really great to feel really confident, and that when we're insecure we don't really feel too good. Self-efficacy is that when we've taken action, and we've taken enough action to actually see results, then we feel even more confident and we feel even more capable of taking more action to get even more results. And because this confidence that comes from having grit makes us feel so good, our life satisfaction is higher. And grit is also a part of growing up. We give up everything we could have been as a child to do the one thing that we're aiming to do as an adult. So grit is, without a doubt, very important. But if we look closely at what Angela Duckworth actually means with grit, she recommends having long-term, short-term and middle-term goals. The long-term goal should always be there, it should never change, and it should only be one. It should be that we put our entire focus on this one goal. However, when it comes to short-term goals, these are goals that are just there to somehow get us to that long-term goal, but we're not sure if these methods, these goals that we're setting for ourselves actually work, actually get us where we want to get to. So these short-term goals are definitely going to change, and they should change because you want to experiment a lot with different methods, different short-term goals to see whether they actually bring you towards that long-term goal. And when it comes to the middle-term goals, these should also change, but not as much as short-term goals. So when it comes to the short-term goals, you can change them. These are the things that you can quit. So Angela Duckworth's idea of grit doesn't exclude quitting after all. We can still have grit even when we quit. The only thing you have to make sure in order for it to still be grit is that these short-term goals are somehow moving in more or less the same direction, that it's not something that's totally unrelated to the other short-term goal you had before. This raises the next question. How do we know which short-term goal to quit? So one way we can know that is, as Eric Barker pointed out in Tom Bilyeu's podcast, is that with the WHOOP method you can see, so one part of the WHOOP method, I've talked loads about it in other videos, so now I'm just going to quickly get to the point. The second O stands for obstacles and the last P stands for plan. So when it comes to the obstacles category, you want to write down every single thing that could get in the way of you reaching your goal. And then when it comes to the plan, you want to see how you can plan around these obstacles. Now, what Eric Barker says is that if you feel like the obstacles are too big and you, after you've done this root method thing, feel kind of demotivated because you notice that you don't want the outcome that much after all if you have to put so much effort in, then that could be a short term that you might want to consider quitting. However, if the root method, you feel kind of energized and motivated after doing that, even though you've thought of all the obstacles, that's a sign that you should go on. And of course, if you notice that you really hate this short-term goal, that you really don't enjoy what you're doing at the moment, if you don't enjoy, for example, the job that you're currently doing, or if you don't necessarily like the relationship you're in right now, if you don't enjoy that, then there's no point forcing yourself to go on just because you've spent so much time already, so much energy to get or maintain that certain thing. In Stephen Bartlett's podcast, in an episode with Jay Shetty, Stephen Bartlett pointed out what's very interesting about Jay Shetty is that he is a good quitter. If you know anything about Jay Shetty, that in his early years he actually wanted to be more in the business world, but then he came across this monk and he was so inspired by this monk that he thought, I'm going to quit what I'm doing right now because I'm seeing that it's not giving me as much fulfillment as I think I will find being a monk. So he quit everything and started becoming a monk himself. And then later on, as you probably know, but now he still is totally into mindfulness. He's very successful now and he's very engaged in the modern world too. And Stephen Bartlett thinks that it's very important to be a good quitter because you need to experiment a lot to know what it is that you actually like. So what Stephen Bartlett recommends is that with your first job, you see, what do I like about this job? What don't I like about this job? And then you, after a while, you quit. And then you try to find those things you did like in that job, in the next job you want to have, and try to avoid those things that you didn't like about the job in the next job you want to have. So that now you've got a little more of the things that you do like about this job, little less about what you didn't like about the job before. And that you go on like that more and more until you find that at least the most part of the job is what you really enjoy and there's only a very little bit that you don't enjoy. But if you listen closely to Stephen Bartlett in that episode, it's still pursuing the same thing, it's still moving in the same direction, because he says that you should always try to search for the thing that you did like in that job. That means you are not moving in an entirely opposite direction. You're just avoiding the things that you didn't like about the job before and searching for the things that you did like in the job before. So overall, you're always moving further in the same direction and you're getting more and more of the things that you do like. A thing about passion and purpose that many people get wrong is that people think that passion is something you find and you have to be really introspective to find that out. But actually, passion is something that is developed. Passion is something that you actually kind of not learn through introspection, but through actually doing things in the outside world to experiment and then find out what you're interested in. You can hardly be interested in a subject that you have no idea actually exists. It simply doesn't make sense. Only once you know about it, once you get into a subject, you know whether you're passionate about it or not. So make small investments of time and energy into these new things that you find may actually be kind of fulfilling, be something you could be passionate about. And another reason why you shouldn't simply always have grit and you need to try out new things every now and then is because of the molecule dopamine. Dopamine is released when we experience novelty. And there's no way you can experience novelty if you're trying to have a lot of grit and only stick to the thing that you already know. So if you have grit alone, if you only do things that are gritty all the time, then you're going to miss out on a lot of novelty that could be very exciting, could fulfill you in many ways. However, the problem with seeking for a certain job that is totally perfect and to only stay in a job that you enjoy 100%, such a thing doesn't exist. You're never going to find the perfect job. You're always going to have certain problems, certain struggles, no matter how great your job is. And at some points, you have to do things that you don't necessarily feel like doing. Successful people make their decisions based on commitments, whereas unsuccessful people make their decisions based on feelings. Both the unsuccessful and the successful hate to do what it takes. The only difference is that the successful people do it anyway. So try to find a job that doesn't make you happy all the time, but that you find important. Because many people get happiness very wrong. They feel that happiness is all about feeling good. However, true happiness is finding something that you're so passionate about, that's so important to you, that it's more important than feeling good. Passion isn't this wonderful bliss, this thing where everything fits perfectly into place and everything's harmonious and everything's wonderful. Passion actually comes from the Latin and in some way means suffering. So being passionate about something is something that you find so important that you are willing to suffer for it. And this is very important because when you find meaning behind problems, then these problems become less annoying. Because studies have found that we suffer less if we attach meaning to our pain. So all in all, I would say that you should, at a certain point, stay in a job where you enjoy most of the things, but not everything, because you're never going to find that job. And then at some point, you can start delegating the things that you don't like about it and do more and more of the stuff that you actually do enjoy. But find a job that isn't only enjoyable, because you're never going to find such a job, but find one that you find very important. So, as you've already seen in this video, grit is a lot about focusing on a particular thing. Now, if you want to know whether you should focus on a skill or have many skills or develop many skills for success, then you can watch this video here.